Maybe you're trying to get a tree to stay in a small spot, or you're attempting to shape it as it develops. In the case of these birches, we didn't prune them in the dormant time because they were very small trees. We just planted a year ago, and we knew what was going to happen in the spring. They were going to explode with growth, and then at that time they would need corrective pruning to pick the right branches. We want to show off the trunk, we want to show off the branching of the tree, and we want to kind of guide this into the shape that we want it eventually to be. So on these kinds of trees that grow like crazy in the spring, we want to wait until they sprout out, and then we can prune them and turn them into the tree that we're envisioning for this landscape. These are universal pruning tips. All the techniques I'll be showing you can be applied to almost every tree. We did a pruning video on Japanese maples. You'll see a lot of similarities. You don't want to be doing heading back cuts on nice trees where you're trying to accentuate its form and its shape and its beauty. You don't need a lot of tools. We need small pruning shears like this, hand pruning shears. If some of the branches have gotten too big to prune with this, I might need here and there a bigger set of pruning shears. What you're not going to need is hedge trimmers, because we're not going to do any of that kind of pruning where you just shear leaves or branches. So our Dura Heat birch here, we will be removing branches that clog up the center because we want to open it up. I see one right here that I'd like to remove. And then we will be removing branches that are too close to each other, like right next to each other, because we want to now select the branches that will become our main branches for the rest of its lifetime. If we see any dead wood, we'll take that out. It's not like there's only certain branches on this tree that you can prune. There's a whole bunch of choices you're going to be making, and as long as you have the concept in mind, probably all the choices would be fine. The concept is these are thinning cuts. We're removing entire branches. We're raising the level of the tree so it's not competing with the plants under it. And we're taking out all the crossing branches. We're opening up the center. We want air to be able to go through. We don't want this to be a big blob that wind just blows over because it's resistant to wind. And we want to be able to see the structure of the tree. So if you envision that, I want to see the structure of the tree, I want to take off entire branches, I want this to be thinned, not headed back, then you can approach it with a freedom. It's really not a wrong cut. So all of this growth in here is kind of gumming up the middle, and so I'm going to take these small branches off. You can see these are oriented towards the center. If they were oriented towards the outside, I would be a little more careful, but since they're the center, I'll take them off. I'm not going to cut them in half like that. I'm going to cut them where they originate, right at the trunk. So things like this that are just small branches, I'm going to take them off. That'll allow wind to go through the tree. It'll allow us to see branches better. You notice these are multi-trunk trees, so they have more than one trunk. So we'll clean all of these kind of in the center and start to open them up and make it where we can see the branching structure of the tree. And you'll see the effect of that when I'm done. If you decide to cut a major branch, I'm going to cut this one. A lot of times you can do some damage by trying to make the final cut right in the beginning because the branch is heavy and it'll tear. So one technique is to make the cut well above where you want it, and then make your final cut without much resistance because you've already removed most of the weight. Here we want this branch to lift up a little because it's so low, but we don't want to cut the whole thing off. So we'll go to a bud like this, and we'll make that cut, and it'll sprout right under that. And that's just minor pruning. That branch will probably eventually come off because it's so low, but for now, that's a kind of a nice way to leave some greenery in parts of the tree that will make it look better when it's young. There's not a magic number of branches you should remove, and it's going to vary depending on how the tree has grown. You know, these trees grew like crazy. One reason is we loaded them up with blend when we planted them. That healthy soil allowed them to grow a lot. So some of them are more dense than others. Some you'll probably do twice as many cuts as others. What we're hoping to do is give them a little uniformity so they all look similar. You can see how we planted these trees in masses, and this mass planting looks best if the trees have some similarity. So we want their forms to all be the same, and we want their size to be similar. We have another pruning video on the Japanese maple, Acer palmatum, a really popular, beautiful tree that relies on skillful pruning. I pruned in the dormant time of the year, and that's on a prior video. Check that out.